How you guys doing?
Doing well.
Well, we're fired up. It's opening day, and we're making all our projections, and we've got very, very high ambitions for you guys. I'm sure you do too. When you look at how things went, at how things are going, how do you feel to start this season?
Good. I think that the longer I do this, the more I feel like, spring training is spring training. I think we don't talk about, like NFL preseason or NBA preseason the same way we talk about, spring training. We talk about stats a lot and how guys are looking, which is probably not ideal. And the more I do this, I feel like what I really try to focus on is the health of the team and,
Right.
our guys sort of getting to the starting blocks, in the right way. And I feel really good about that. I thought that, Craig and the coaching staff and the training staff did a great job this spring. And I think we're starting out in a good position.
Jed, when you look at the depth of your starting pitching, you go back and you look at the minor leagues and some of the guys who might contribute to the major league team this year. We just talked to Bruce Levine, for instance, and he thinks the story of this season is going to be how your young arms in your system will contribute to the major league team and in contention, ideally. I just wondered, do you agree with that? Are you looking for that to happen? And was that a contributing factor to why maybe you weren't involved with the pursuit of Jordan Montgomery?
Yeah. Well, I'd say on the depth part, the game has changed so incredibly much. I think when you look at the way it used to be on opening day, you have your 5 starters, and you probably hope those guys would throw 900 to 1,000 innings. And, in today's world, that's just not reality. There's a lot more injuries. There's a lot more short starts. You're going to get down to starter 8, 9, 10, 11 for sure. And so knowing that, I think the depth of your pitching is just so critically important. If you don't have real pitching depth in today's game, you're really just hoping you get lucky with injuries and avoid them, because almost every team is going to face what I just said. And I think given that, I feel really good going into it. It's something we didn't have for a long time. I think we've built it up, and I think we're proud of it. And I think it will help us at some point this season. And, when it does, it's not going to be a great moment, to be candid. We're going to have an injury that's going to force us to do that, or we're going to have someone that's not performing. But that's inevitable. That's the nature of baseball in 2024, and we have to be prepared for that. And I think we do have the young pitching to withstand that.
I'm curious, when you are putting your team together, there's an old adage in the NFL, which is it's the general manager's, it's the coach's job to win in the right now. It's the general manager's job to protect the franchise from the coach. And I think that applies in all sports, and certainly we see it in baseball. And the manager is all about today's game and winning in the right now, and you have to have the larger picture. So when you're looking to make moves during the season, must you keep in mind making sure you're not blocking guys if you feel you have someone on the verge? Must you kind of be aware of how one year leads to the next and the next? Do you have to approach, and obviously there's a tax issue that you got to be aware of. Do all those things come into play as you build this team?
Always. I think you always have sort of one eye on the present and one eye on the future. But at the same time, I do think, that one of the reasons I wanted to be so aggressive when we had a chance with Craig and to bring him on board as our manager is he has a fantastic perspective on an entire organization. My conversations with him, he's a manager who he wants to win tonight's game and tomorrow's game just as much as anybody, but he also understands a larger picture. I think he knows that, the way we're going to be really good for a long time is by, giving those guys chances and by not, trading them all away for just a small gain right now. And so he understands that stuff really, really well. He started out in the front office. I think that the way that, Milwaukee as a smaller market was building teams, I think helped with that. So I think there's a natural tension that you have with any manager that's healthy, that in some ways we have different jobs, right? That his job is so focused on tonight's game and tomorrow's game. And my job is, as you said, organization building and making sure the team's healthy. So there's a natural tension there, but I think that there's a way to handle that tension that is the right way. And I feel as though when I talk to Craig, he knows my perspective. He's thought through my perspective And I think I've done the same with him. And so I think it takes away some of that tension, which is good. But, I joke about it. We haven't lost a game together yet. We haven't had, those bad moments. And so we'll see how we react to them together. But I do think his perspective on the big picture is really fantastic. And I think that will help what we're trying to do, which is build something that's good every year. That, our opening day conversation every year is a positive, because we know we're going to be in contention, and that's ultimately what you want to build as an organization.
So in those moments, maybe you've encountered that creative tension or natural tension, as you call it, Jed. What have you learned about Craig Counsell and the way that he may navigate through that in ways that he is kidded about asking maybe so many questions, maybe the wrong questions? And when you hired him, you wanted somebody to challenge you. How difficult will this manager be to manage? Have you gotten a sense of that yet? Because there could be good things about that, but it also could be different and challenging.
Well, ultimately, we're trying to be, we're trying to be great. We're trying to be a great organization. And I think with that, you have to ask hard questions. And I never take offense if it's a question about, why do we do this, or, something about a report or a database or a decision or a process. Like, I think that's terrific that, having someone who's really smart with a fresh set of eyes to ask those questions is great. And I think that if you, as a leader, if you shy away from those questions and aren't willing to kind of turn the lens on the things you're doing, then I think that you're not willing to get better. And so I did feel that when we hired Craig, I thought to myself that I was doing something that was uncomfortable. That we had a comfortable situation before, and it was going to be something that I thought was going to be great, but I also thought would be challenging. And he would ask hard questions, and he would push us, and that's what he's done. I think that's exactly what we wanted, and I think in the long run, we'll all be better for it.
I was fascinated. First of all, it's been a ton of fun watching spring training and seeing a lot of your young players and the Owen Caseys of the world and the Matt Shaws and all these guys. Just getting a chance to get eyeballs on them is tons of fun, and you imagine when they're coming up and what they're going to do. But then, like, Jim Callis wrote about the farm system and lauded it and said that it compared favorably to the group that you guys put together en route to that World Series, because you had better pitching than you did then. You had more balance with guys coming up. That's a wonderful thing to have. But as we all know, there's a difference between prospects and then the actual payoff of it and the use of them, as you guys did to get to that World Series, to get other people in here, etc. Are you at that point yet, or are you a year or two away from that?
I think we're a little bit away. I mean, when I think about 2016, like that season, by that point, during 15, we had broken in. Addison had come up and played. Obviously, Chris was the rookie of the year. And it felt like those guys were a little bit more established. Like, as we started that season, those guys, you kind of knew what those guys were. I feel like 15 was the year where we started the season and didn't know, exactly what those guys would be. Chris could have come up and struggled. Addison started the year in the minors. And so we didn't have a great feel for it. And, one of the things that really does excite me about the year, and I agree with you on spring training, is it does excite me that, when we have the inevitable injuries or poor performance or whatever happens, we're going to be calling on a really talented young player to come up and help us. And I think that is, that's exciting. That it may not be right away in April, but like as the summer goes on, I think we'll be infusing that next group onto the team, and that's really fun for us. It's fun for fans, and I think it's real depth. You're not relying on minor league free agents. You're not relying on older players to just be replacement level. You're bringing up guys that have a chance to have a real impact. I'll also say one of the things that Craig has said that I have loved is that, the expectation has to be that guys will struggle. And, that's the expectation with young players, and you have to be willing to go through some of those moments of pain. The Chris Bryants of the world, that is the absolute exception. He came up here, he never struggled. He's kind of rookie of the year MVP. Like those things don't happen. You have to expect that, Rizzo's path is probably more revealing, where he came up in San Diego was awful. And we benefited by their mistake trading him to us. But I think you have to expect some struggles and some difficulties. But I think if you're willing to go through that, I know these guys are very talented, and I know they're going to have a huge impact on the Cubs for a long time.
So in that context, what's the right way to view Michael Bush this year? In spring training, you watch him and you wonder, boy, can that swing translate into the regular season? And boy, can those numbers as a PCL MVP translate into the majors? What have you seen to make you confident that he can be the guy who's going to keep that job?
Well, yeah, he has a great way about him. I think he fits in exceptionally well with our group. I do think he's a little bit older. I think that, he was a college guy. COVID slowed him up a year, after he got drafted, and then obviously he was with the Dodgers. And so I think with most organizations, he would have been thrown up to the big leagues, sometime early last season. Instead, he spent the full season last year dominating in the minors. So I do think he's, in some ways, I would say almost over ready, that he's been waiting for this opportunity. I thought he looked really good this spring. I think he's going to continue to get better and better at first. And I do love the way he takes his at-bats, that they're patient. He really knows the strike zone. And I think that, by just going up there and having quality at-bats, I think he's going to fit in really well and perform really well.
Do you guys, I'm sure you see what the projections are for your team that are out there. Do you have internal projections where you think, well, we're going to do better than that, or that's very optimistic? I mean, how do you balance what people expect from you versus what you expect?
Well, a couple of things. I actually think it's really valuable third parties. It is valuable because I think that every team in baseball, 30 for 30, probably has rosier projections on themselves than other people. And I think if you didn't have any third parties to evaluate your farm system or to evaluate your team, I think you'd be in a lot of trouble, because I think it would be, everyone would have rose-colored glasses on. So, I look at the projections. I think you can take a lot from them. I always say the same thing, which is it's our job to beat those projections. Last year, I think we were optimistic and we beat our projections by quite a bit. It wasn't quite enough. We needed a couple more games last year, but we certainly beat the projections. And that's the goal going in, is that we have to, as a group, we have to, work all summer to try to beat all the projections. And it's going to be a tough division. I mean, there's no question that you've got, 5 teams that can compete. You've got 5 teams that have a ton of young, controllable talent. And I look at this division, I think, right now, it's a flat division, but it's not considered a great division. I think you're going to look up in 2 or 3 years, and it's going to be a division with 5 really good teams, really talented teams, and it's going to be viewed very differently, I think, in the industry. So, we have real competition with teams that are really talented around us, and we have to go out there and we have to beat our projections.
I want to go back to the rotation for a moment. So Jameson Taillon's back injury, which could delay his start to the season, maybe the end of April, who knows when, but it could linger as well. Got to protect yourself against that, Jed. I just wonder, could you explain the thought process in not necessarily going after, maybe you did and we weren't aware of it, but a guy like Jordan Montgomery, Blake Snell, there were other veterans out there that might have been stopgaps, maybe supplements to this rotation in case Jameson Taillon's injury lingers longer than you would like.
Yeah, no question. I mean, obviously those are things that I think every team probably talked about, because it became clear those teams, those players were going to get shorter deals, and that was going to be similar to what happened with Cody or with Matt Chapman. Candidly, when there was a situation, I guess it was late February, where there was those 4 guys were out there plus a couple other free agents, and we knew we had the kind of financially we could go after one of those guys and be aggressive to get one of those guys and push. And Cody for us was the best fit. Candidly, we felt like what he brought to our team. We knew him. He could play center. He could play first. He could play corner outfield if we needed him to. We felt like we needed a left-handed bat in the middle of the lineup. All those different things. We felt like of all those guys, he was the right guy for us to pursue, and so that was our decision. Was to go after him. I think by the time after that, we were not able to go after those guys, and certainly you can never have enough pitching, and I think that. The Giants and Diamondbacks got really good pitchers, but obviously that was something that we decided before that Cody was the right fit, and we're really excited we have him back.
When we talk about the young guys and how they're playing, and it's great that you have cover if something goes awry, but every once in a while you got a guy that will play so well that you got to find a spot for him. How do you handle that? Is that the ideal situation, or does that become a problem? And, I'm thinking of Morrell last year, did very well and came up and managed to do that. Do you feel like you have surprises like that in the offing?
I would love that. I mean, I think that's
Yep.
That's the best situation you can have, where a guy just makes it really clear. I think that you hope that guys kind of bang the door down and make it clear they're ready for the big leagues, and it's not just because of an injury. And if that happens, we'll figure it out. I think that we know that some of these guys that are in the minors have a chance to be really good, and we want them to be part of our future. And if they decide that it has to be earlier than we thought, then we'll take that problem, but I think that's ultimately what you want and you hope for. And, it is hard. Like, I would say that, one of the challenges that we have now is, the gap between AAA and the big leagues is the biggest it's ever been since I've been doing this. Just that Major League pitching is so good, that it is really hard to sometimes evaluate that. And so even when a guy does that, I still think you have to anticipate the same struggles because the gap is wider. But certainly if a guy wants to just throw up crazy numbers and dominate, kind of like Morrell did last year, that's a great problem. And, something we'll certainly look forward to if that happens.
Jed, I don't know what you guys did to alienate the schedule makers, but it's not kind early on. You look at your 22 of the first 32 games: Rangers, Dodgers, Padres, Mariners, Diamondbacks, Astros, Yankees. How will that schedule, as tough as it looks, color your perception or your interpretation of what's going on early if things may not get off to the kind of start that you want?
Well, I think you have to have the right perspective on it, that, we're aware of the same thing. It's certainly, when you stare at it, you're like, oh, there's not a lot of breaks in that schedule, and, a tough 3-city road trip on the West Coast to start. And, in some ways, I maybe I'm trying to look at it the right way, that, I think you'd rather have that early in the season. It's a good test for us early. And one thing I feel is sort of a danger. I look at last season, for example, right? Last year, I thought our schedule was kind of brutal out of the gate as well. And we played really well in April, and we kind of grinded. I think we were like 14-10 through that tough schedule. I think we, won 2 out of 3 against the Dodgers, and we felt like we were doing really well. And then we went and played the Marlins, and we played the Nationals, and had this like a disaster road trip. And the first moment that we had kind of a break in our schedule, so to speak. And so it was sort of a good lesson in a lot of ways, where, I just think, I always say, like, if you're playing well, you can beat anyone. And if you're not playing well in this league, you're going to lose to anyone. And I just, ultimately, yes, it is certainly a grind of a schedule early, and we just have to win one game at a time and get through it. But I also feel like I've also seen it where you finally get a break in the schedule and everyone kind of relaxes, or you maybe have a couple injuries during that stretch, and next thing you know, you blew those games against poor teams. So I've seen it both ways, but yes, it is not an easy early schedule. We have to have our A game going right away, and it's going to be a really good test for everybody.
Jed, it's great catching up with you. Best of luck tonight and in the season. We're really looking forward to it.
Thanks, Jed.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. Be well.
That is Jed Hoyer. Great to talk to the president.
Down in Texas, getting ready to play the Rangers pregame right here on The Score beginning at 6 o'clock.